What exactly is Saudi Arabia's game plan within BRICS? Saudi Arabia's delayed entry into BRICS has puzzled observers, but China's recent embrace of the IMEC trade route may reveal its clever strategy to bring Saudi Arabia back into the BRICS fold. In this video, we will analyze the geopolitical factors behind Saudi Arabia's BRICS hesitance and how China is navigating regional tensions to reconnect the kingdom with leading emerging economies. Let me break down why Saudi Arabia is trying to balance its relationships with Western allies and the allure of emerging powers like BRICS. We will also examine China's pragmatic economic and diplomatic logic in boosting Gulf trade via IMEC. Is China laying the groundwork for Saudi Arabia's eventual BRICS accession? Get ready to analyze with us the recent dynamics and discover the intricate balancing game between the West, China, and the Middle East. How might seemingly unrelated events such as the Red Sea blockade shape Saudi Arabia's future alignment? Can China successfully integrate Saudi Arabia into its sphere? Prepare yourself for a comprehensive and understandable analysis that will no doubt pique your interest. This video offers a fresh and unique perspective on the new power games emerging in the region. Prepare to be captivated by this exploration on a journey that will uncover the geopolitical fault lines that will define our next decade. Saudi Arabia has not yet formally become a member of the BRICS group, according to the country's trade minister Majid Al-Kassabi. During a panel discussion at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Al-Kassabi clarified that although Saudi Arabia has received an invitation to join BRICS, it has not yet done so officially. This statement provided clarity after confusion earlier this month when Saudi state TV reported that the kingdom had joined the bloc. However, these reports were later removed from their social media platforms. This surprised many observers who expected Saudi Arabia to join BRICS at the start of 2024. There are a few likely reasons why Saudi Arabia has delayed joining BRICS. One is that the West often sees BRICS as opposing Western interests. Saudi Arabia may want to avoid being perceived as anti-Western by delaying its entry into BRICS. The kingdom has close ties with Western countries, especially the United States, and depends on them for trade, investment, and security cooperation. Joining an association viewed as challenging Western dominance could jeopardize these relationships. Another factor is the conflict between Iran and Israel that involves the Red Sea region. Saudi Arabia blames Iran for supporting Houthi rebels in Yemen who have attacked Israel. This regional tension may make Saudi Arabia cautious about joining BRICS at the same time as Iran, which is already a BRICS member. Saudi Arabia and Iran are rivals for influence in the Middle East. The kingdom doesn't want to boost Iran's status in BRICS while the proxy conflict between them is ongoing. Additionally, Israel and the US may be pressuring Saudi Arabia to delay BRICS membership. They may tie cooperation on the proposed India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor to Saudi Arabia staying out of BRICS for now. This corridor is a high priority for the Saudis as it would boost trade and economic growth. However, it needs participation from Israel and the US to become reality. If they require Saudi Arabia to avoid deeper ties with BRICS as a condition for supporting the corridor project, the kingdom may have little choice but to comply. So it's clear that lots of geopolitical factors be at play. Joining BRICS would signal a shift in Saudi Arabia's foreign policy orientation towards the East and emerging powers like China, India, and Russia. At the same time, the kingdom relies heavily on security partnerships with the US and other Western countries. Moving too quickly towards BRICS before managing ties with the West risks undermining these key relationships. For now, Riyadh seems to be cooperating with BRICS countries in areas of mutual interest like energy without formal membership. This gradualist strategy allows Saudi Arabia to balance relationships during global shifts. However, deeper integration into leading developing economies appears inevitable long-term. Once regional tensions ease, and ties with Western partners are managed, Saudi Arabia will likely pursue BRICS membership more actively. Its prudent pause likely reflects shrewd diplomacy, not disinterest. Riyadh seeks maximum advantage by biding time. Despite delays, Saudi Arabia seems set to eventually join BRICS, extending the bloc's influence.
تتمتع المملكة بصداقة قوية وعلاقات تجارية وشراكات استراتيجية مع كافة دول المجموعة، وتعتز المملكة بكونها أكبر شريك تجاري لمجموعة بريكس بمنطقة الشرق الأوسط، بإجمالي التجارة الثنائية مع دول المجموعة تجاوز 160 مليار دولار في عام 2022، الأمر الذي يعكس علاقة متينة مع المجموعة، ونتطلع إلى تطوير هذا التعاون بما يخلق فرص تنموية واقتصادية جديدة ترتقي بعلاقاتنا نحو الطموح المأمول. إن العلاقة الاستراتيجية المتميزة بين المملكة ودول مجموعة بريكس تعززها عطور المبادئ المشتركة، ومن أبرزها الإيمان الراسخ بمبدأ احترام سيادة الدول واستقلالها وعدم التدخل في شؤونها، والتمسك بمبادئ القانون الدولي وتسوية النزاعات بالطرق السلمية، والحرص على صون السلم والأمن الدوليين، واتخاذ أفضل الأطر الدبلوماسية متعددة الأطراف من أجل تحقيق التعاون الأمثل والتنمية المشتركة الفعالة.
Saudi Arabia is proceeding judiciously on BRICS entry to balance geopolitics. Meanwhile, BRICS influence grows, reflecting rising multipolarity among emerging economies. Overall, BRICS is increasingly representative of the global south and shifting toward a diverse multipolar order. This bodes well for Saudi Arabia's eventual entry. Russia believes Saudi Arabia stays committed to joining BRICS based on agreements made. Recent high-level talks addressed membership. Moscow will facilitate Saudi Arabia's integration. Russia's President Putin pledged smooth integration of new members while upholding founding principles like openness and collective problem-solving. Inherent in these events is a crucial progression that could validate the balancing and reconciliation strategy that China has been astutely implementing in recent weeks. A recent report by Ynet, which is the online-only spin-off of Israel's largest newspaper, Yediot Ahronoth, reveals that China has started exporting goods to Israel via the IMEC corridor, which runs through the Gulf states and Jordan. This is despite previous skepticism that China would rely on American-backed connectivity projects. IMEC provides a partial alternative to the Red Sea, which faces blockade threats from Yemen's Houthi rebels. China's pragmatic embrace of IMEC debunks assumptions that countries like the Gulf monarchies would always side with the US over China. In reality, these states are strategically autonomous and prioritize their own interests. The Red Sea crisis gave them a chance to profit from IMEC trade with China, which they seized. For China, IMEC mitigates supply chain risks and offers a quicker transit time than the tense Red Sea. Although costs are higher, this is offset by avoiding massive insurance hikes triggered by regional instability. IMEC also prevents a European recession that total disruption of China-European Union trade would cause. The US accepts China's IMEC usage as it eases problems for allies like Israel. However, China has bigger strategic motives behind using IMEC. Strengthening trade connectivity with Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states could influence their geopolitical alignment. This may gradually reconnect Saudi Arabia with BRICS after its membership delay. China recognizes that although Saudi Arabia postponed joining BRICS largely due to Western pressure, it still seeks balanced relationships with both the West and leading developing economies. Active BRICS engagement remains in Saudi Arabia's long-term interests. By facilitating lucrative IMEC trade with Saudi Arabia outside of BRICS, China provides incentives for the kingdom to reconsider its BRICS approach. This could slowly neutralize the regional and Western influences behind Saudi Arabia's hesitance on membership. A thriving IMEC corridor supported by China-Saudi trade could also reduce Saudi concerns about Iran's role in BRICS. Functional connectivity and economic integration may improve regional tensions. This would further diminish Saudi Arabia's reasons to keep distance from BRICS. Therefore, China's IMEC strategy has an economic and diplomatic logic beyond just logistics. Boosting trade with Gulf monarchies demonstrates BRICS' geopolitical and economic value to the region. This could gradually sway Saudi Arabia to re-engage with BRICS accession. In essence, China is utilizing IMEC to incentivize Saudi Arabia and cultivate regional conditions conducive to the kingdom's eventual BRICS membership. Although prudent near-term hesitation may continue, China's long-term focus remains on incorporating Saudi Arabia into leading emerging economies alongside itself. This nuanced approach allows China to respect Saudi Arabia's delicate balance between Western partners and BRICS in the short term. However, in the long term, deepening practical connectivity and economic ties through IMEC may ultimately facilitate Saudi Arabia's full integration into BRICS. This demonstrates China's patient but persistent geopolitical strategy. So, while Saudi Arabia currently seems distant from BRICS under Western and regional pressure, China is leveraging IMEC to quietly redirect Saudi alignment. By fleshing out BRICS' regional appeal, China aims to bring Saudi Arabia firmly into its sphere over time. Far from abandoning shared plans, China sees IMEC as the path to eventually linking Saudi Arabia with BRICS. And that wraps up our analysis of Saudi Arabia's delicate geopolitical dance between the West and rising BRICS powers. Understanding these dynamics provides insight into the shifting sense of alignment in the region. While Saudi Arabia is proceeding cautiously, China is playing the long game using economic incentives to gradually pull the kingdom into its orbit. The success of this strategy remains to be seen. I hope this video gave you a unique perspective on the competing forces influencing Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What future do you see for Saudi ties with BRICS and the West? Don't forget to like this video if you found it insightful, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future geopolitical analysis. I aim to continue providing accessible explanations of complex issues shaping our world. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.